Imagine you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. The room is completely silent. Suddenly, you hear a small sound coming from somewhere in the darkness. Within a fraction of a second, your heart starts racing. Your breathing becomes faster. Your muscles tighten. Your eyes search every corner of the room. For a brief moment, your body is completely convinced that something terrible is about to happen. But then you switch on the light, and there is nothing there. No danger, no intruder, no monster, just an empty room. So here's the question. Asterisk, asterisk, if there was never any real danger, who created the fear? Asterisk, asterisk, most people believe fear comes from the outside world. You think dangerous situations create fear. But neuroscience tells us something far more surprising. Fear doesn't begin in the world around you. It begins inside your brain. Long before you consciously understand what's happening, your brain has already decided whether you're safe or not. In many cases, it makes that decision without your permission. That means some of the biggest fears you've ever felt weren't created by reality. They were created by your own mind. Think about the last time you felt anxious before an exam, a job interview, speaking in front of people, or sending an important message. Nothing bad had happened yet. Nobody had rejected you. Nobody had judged you. Nothing had gone wrong. And yet your heart beat faster, your hands became sweaty, your stomach tightened, and your mind imagined every possible disaster. Why would your brain scare you before anything has even happened? Why would the organ that's supposed to protect you become the very thing that fills your life with fear? To answer that question, we have to travel back tens of thousands of years, to a world where fear wasn't simply an emotion, it was survival itself. Our ancestors lived in forests filled with predators, harsh weather, disease, and constant uncertainty. Every strange sound could mean danger. Every shadow might hide a predator. Every mistake could be their last. In that world, the people who ignored danger rarely survived long enough to pass on their genes. But the people whose brains constantly expected danger survived. Evolution rewarded brains that overreacted rather than underreacted. Imagine hearing leaves rustle behind you in the ancient wilderness. You have two choices. You can assume it's just the wind. Or you can assume it's a hungry predator. If you run away and it was only the wind, you've wasted a little energy. But if you stay still and it was actually a predator, you may never get another chance. Over thousands of generations, evolution programmed the human brain to choose survival over certainty. It became better to fear something that wasn't there than to ignore something that was. That ancient survival system is still operating inside your head today. The only difference is that most modern dangers aren't lions hiding in the bushes. They're deadlines, social rejection, public speaking, financial uncertainty, relationship problems, embarrassing memories. Yet your brain often reacts to these psychological threats almost the same way it once reacted to physical predators. It doesn't always know the difference between being chased through a forest and standing in front of an audience. To your ancient brain, both can feel like threats to survival. Deep inside your brain is a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Think of it as your internal alarm system. Its only job is to constantly ask one question: am I safe? The fascinating part is that it doesn't wait for complete evidence before making a decision. It reacts first and asks questions later. The instant it notices something unfamiliar, unpredictable, or potentially threatening, it activates your body's emergency response. This happens so quickly that your conscious mind often hasn't even figured out what scared you yet. Within milliseconds, your nervous system shifts into survival mode. Your heart pumps faster to send more oxygen to your muscles. Your breathing becomes quicker. Your pupils widen to gather more visual information. Blood is redirected away from digestion and toward movement. Every system inside your body prepares for one purpose: to keep you alive. All of this can happen before you've consciously realized why you're afraid. Your thinking brain is often several steps behind your survival brain. This explains why people jump after hearing a loud noise and only afterward realize it was harmless. It explains why horror movies make your heart race even though you know you're sitting safely on a couch. It explains why nightmares can wake you up sweating despite nothing dangerous existing in your bedroom. Your brain responds to perceived danger first. Reality comes second. Sometimes the fear disappears after a few seconds. Other times it stays long after the threat is gone. Even more fascinating is the fact that your brain doesn't always need real danger to activate fear. Sometimes a memory is enough. Think about an embarrassing moment from years ago. Maybe you forgot your speech. Maybe people laughed at you. Maybe someone rejected you. Simply remembering that moment can make your heart beat faster today. That's because every time you vividly recall an emotional memory, your brain partially recreates the original experience. It isn't simply watching the past like a movie. In many ways, it's reliving it. This is why trauma can remain powerful for years. It's also why anxiety often grows stronger through imagination. What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if something goes wrong? What if I lose everything? None of those things have actually happened, yet your body responds as though they already have. Fear isn't always reacting to reality. Very often it's reacting to possibility, and possibility has no limits. Ironically, one of the greatest abilities humans possess is also one of our greatest weaknesses. We can imagine the future. That incredible ability allowed us to build civilizations, invent technology, create art, and plan for tomorrow. But it also gave us the ability to imagine disasters that may never happen. Animals mostly fear what's directly in front of them. Humans fear next week, next year, and many times entire futures that exist only inside their own minds. This is why your imagination can become your greatest enemy.
This is why your imagination can become your greatest enemy. The brain cannot always distinguish between vividly imagined danger and actual danger. If the image feels emotionally real enough, your body reacts accordingly. That's why someone can lose sleep over a conversation that hasn't happened yet. That's why people experience panic attacks while sitting safely at home. The danger exists only inside the mind, but the body's response is completely real. The truth is both fascinating and unsettling. Fear is not simply something that happens to you. It's something your brain actively creates in an attempt to protect you. Most of the time, that system works beautifully. It keeps you alive. It warns you about genuine threats. But sometimes the same system becomes too sensitive. It starts detecting danger where none exists. It mistakes uncertainty for catastrophe. It mistakes discomfort for disaster. And without realizing it, your own brain becomes the source of the fear you're trying so desperately to escape. But here's the most hopeful part of this entire story. If your brain can learn fear, it can also learn safety. The same brain that creates terrifying predictions can slowly create calmer ones. The same neural pathways that strengthen anxiety can also weaken it. Fear is powerful, but it is not permanent. And once you understand how your brain manufactures fear, you stop seeing yourself as weak. You begin seeing yourself as human, because perhaps the greatest enemy you will ever face isn't hiding somewhere out in the world. Perhaps it's the voice inside your own mind that keeps whispering, "What if?" And perhaps the greatest freedom you'll ever discover is learning that you don't have to believe every fear your brain creates. What makes fear so powerful isn't the danger itself, it's repetition. Every time you avoid something because it scares you, your brain quietly learns an important lesson. It doesn't learn that you survived. It learns that avoiding the situation kept you safe. Imagine someone who is terrified of speaking in front of people. The first time they're asked to give a presentation, they pretend to be sick and stay home. At that moment, they feel relieved. Their anxiety disappears. But that feeling of relief sends a dangerous message to the brain. Avoidance works. The next time they face the same situation, the fear becomes even stronger. Without realizing it, they have trained their own brain to become more afraid. This is one of fear's greatest tricks. Every escape strengthens the prison. The brain is constantly building pathways based on repetition. Think of your thoughts like paths through a forest. The first time you walk across the grass, almost no trail exists. But if you walk the same path every day, it slowly becomes wider, smoother, and easier to follow. Your brain works exactly the same way. Every fearful thought creates a tiny neural pathway. Every time you repeat that thought, the pathway grows stronger. Eventually, your brain begins choosing it automatically. This is why someone who constantly thinks, something bad is going to happen, eventually starts believing it without questioning it. The fear isn't necessarily becoming more accurate, it is simply becoming more familiar. Now imagine waking up every morning and immediately checking your phone for bad news. You scroll through stories about accidents, disasters, violence, economic problems, and conflict. Within minutes, your brain concludes that the world is an incredibly dangerous place. Yet what you're seeing isn't the whole world. It's a carefully selected collection of negative events. Because the human brain naturally pays more attention to danger than safety, negative information leaves a much deeper impression. Psychologists call this the negativity bias. Good news is pleasant, but bad news feels important.
Your brain evolved to remember threats because forgetting a threat could once mean death. Today, however, this ancient survival system often leaves us feeling anxious in a world that is far safer than our minds believe. Another fascinating feature of the brain is that uncertainty often feels scarier than certainty. Imagine your doctor tells you that you'll receive your test results next week. During those 7 days, your mind begins creating endless possibilities. Every headache suddenly feels serious. Every unusual sensation becomes suspicious. Your brain keeps asking, what if? Ironically, the waiting period is often more stressful than finally receiving the answer, even if the answer turns out to be bad. Why? Because uncertainty gives imagination unlimited freedom. When the brain doesn't have enough information, it fills the empty spaces with possibilities, and those possibilities are usually negative. Your survival system would rather prepare for the worst than risk being surprised. This explains why overthinking and fear often appear together. Overthinking feels productive because it creates the illusion that you're solving a problem. Your brain keeps replaying the same frightening scenarios, believing that if it thinks about them enough, it will somehow gain control over the future. Yet every replay strengthens the emotional response. It's like watching the same horror movie every night until your body reacts before the scary scene even begins. The more attention you give fear, the more convincing it becomes. There's another hidden reason fear feels so overwhelming. Fear narrows your attention. Imagine shining a flashlight in a dark forest. Wherever the light points becomes your entire world. Everything outside the beam disappears. Fear does the same thing to your mind. Instead of seeing possibilities, opportunities, or solutions, your brain focuses only on danger. It filters reality through a survival lens. This is why anxious people often overlook positive evidence while instantly noticing anything that confirms their fears. Their brains aren't trying to make them miserable, they're trying to keep them alive. The problem is that survival and happiness are not always the same goal. Perhaps the greatest irony is that the brain cannot completely eliminate fear, nor should it. Without fear, our ancestors would never have survived. Fear keeps us from touching fire, stepping into traffic, or taking reckless risks. The goal isn't to destroy fear. The goal is to understand it. When you recognize fear as a prediction instead of a prophecy, something remarkable happens. You stop treating every anxious thought as the truth. You begin asking a different question. Instead of saying, asterisk, asterisk, what if something terrible happens? You begin asking, what if my brain is simply trying too hard to protect me? That single question changes everything. It transforms fear from an unquestionable authority into a signal that can be examined, and this leads us to one of the most powerful truths about the human mind. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward while fear is still whispering in your ear. Every time you face a situation that scares you and discover that you survive it, your brain quietly updates its prediction. The next time, the fear becomes a little weaker, then weaker again. Slowly, new neural pathways begin replacing the old ones. Confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something your brain learns through experience. Every small act of courage rewrites the story your fear has been telling you. In the final part of this journey, we'll discover how scientists believe the brain can literally rewire itself through experience. Why repeated courage changes your neural circuits. How understanding the science of fear may become the first step toward a life no longer controlled by it.